At my graduation party, my uncles exploded into the open, exposing parental favoritism and tearing our family apart. So this all went down a few months ago at my college graduation party, and I'm still not sure how to process it. For context, my uncle Robert is 32, and he's always been the golden boy of the family. My grandparents treat him like he's a saint. He could set the house on fire, and they'd probably still find a way to blame it on the wind. Meanwhile, my mom, his older sister, has always been treated like second best. Growing up, I noticed it but didn't fully get how deep it went until that night. We had rented out this little Italian restaurant downtown for my graduation dinner. Family, some friends, the usual stuff. The place smelled like garlic and marinara. Everyone was dressed nice, and I was actually excited. For once, the night was supposed to be about me. But of course Robert made sure it wasn't. The first weird thing I noticed was him slipping out of the party, multiple times, phone glued to his ear. His wife, Jenna, was sitting at the table, clearly annoyed but trying to hold it together. She kept making tight smiles every time someone congratulated me, but her eyes were locked on Robert like she knew something was off. Around the middle of dinner, I was giving a little thank you toast. Everyone was clapping, glasses were raised, and then Robert walked back in, whispering and giggling into his phone. My grandma immediately shushed everyone and said, "Oh, Robert's here. Finally, sit down, honey, you must be so tired from work." Like, hello? It was my toast. Everyone turned back to him like he was the main character. My mom muttered under her breath, typical, and I felt this mix of anger and embarrassment boiling up. But I swallowed it because I didn't want drama yet. Then came the blow-up. Jenna suddenly excused herself, walked right out the restaurant doors, and 2 minutes later came storming back and holding another woman's hand. My jaw dropped. This woman was younger, maybe mid-20s, and she looked mortified but also defiant. "Robert," Jenna said loudly, voice shaking, "since you clearly couldn't put your phone down, why don't you introduce your family to your girlfriend?" The entire restaurant went dead silent. You could hear folks cluster against place. My grandma gasped like she'd just witnessed a... Robert froze, his face draining of all colour. He tried to stammer out, "Jenna, let's talk about this later." But Jenna wasn't having it. "No, we'll talk about it now. You've been sneaking around with her for months, missing family dinners, and apparently even my cousin's graduation party isn't important enough for you to stop." And then, the favoritism hit me like a truck. My grandpa stood up and literally said, "Robert doesn't deserve to be attacked like this in public. Jenna, sit down before you embarrass yourself further." Embarrass herself? I swear I saw my mom's face turn red with rage. She slammed her glass down and said, "Of course you'll defend him. He's been your favourite since the day he was born. You didn't even hear her out." Meanwhile, I was just sitting there, watching my graduation party turn into an episode of Jerry Springer. The restaurant was so quiet you could hear the hum of the ceiling fans. Everyone was frozen, watching this disaster unravel. My graduation cake, this big 3-tier chocolate thing with a congrats written in red icing, just sat there untouched like a prop in the middle of the chaos. Robert's face had gone beet red, but he still tried to play it off. "This isn't the time or the place," he muttered, standing up like he was going to leave. But Jenna wasn't letting him off that easy. She yanked the younger woman, who I later found out was named Ashley, closer to him and practically shoved her in front of the table. "Not the time. You've been sneaking around behind my back for 6 months. How long did you think you should keep your little... a secret?" The asps rippled through the family. My cousin Mark whispered, "Holy SHT, asterisk under his breath, and my grandma immediately snapped at him, "Watch your language, young man." Like, really? That's what she cared about? Ashley looked like she wanted to sink into the floor. She muttered, "I didn't know he was married," and pulled her hand away, but Robert grabbed it back, which made everything 10 times worse. My grandpa cleared his throat and boomed, "Enough, Robert is a good man. We will not let one mistake define him. Jenna, you're making a scene at your nephew's graduation party." And that's when I lost it. "She's making a scene?" I said louder than I meant to. "Grandpa, do you even hear yourself? This is my party. Robert's the one who turned it into his personal soap opera, and you're defending him like he didn't just embarrass all of us." The whole table turned to me. My grandma clutched her pearls like I'd just cursed at the Pope. Robert tried to speak again. "Look, But my mom cut him off. "No, don't you dare look us, Robert. You've always been handed everything on a silver platter. Our parents cover for you no matter what. You could... someone and they'd still call you their precious boy." I've never seen my grandpa's face go so red. He barked, "Watch your mouth, young lady. You've always been jealous of Robert's success." "Success?" My mom shot back. "Sleeping around on your wife is success now. Missing your nephew's graduation toast because you're too busy whispering to your mistress in the parking lot." The restaurant staff didn't even know what to do. One of the waiters started bringing out champagne like maybe it would calm things down, but the tension was so thick it could have snapped in half. Jenna's eyes filled with tears, and she whispered, "I didn't even want to ruin this night for you," looking at me, "but I couldn't sit here while everyone pretended like Robert was perfect. He's not. He never has been." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She was right. Meanwhile, Robert finally snapped. "Fine, yes, I messed up. Are you happy? I'm not perfect. Maybe I didn't want to end up like the rest of you, bitter and jealous. Ashley makes me feel alive." You could have heard a pin drop. And then my grandma, without missing a beat, put her hand on Robert's arm and said, "We still love you, sweetheart." At that point, my mom laughed this cold, bitter laugh and said, "Of course you do." That laugh from my mom set the tone for the rest of the night. It wasn't just a laugh, it was years of frustration, resentment, and pain bubbling out in one bitter sound. Everyone in the restaurant stiffened. "You still love him?" she repeated, shaking her head. "Of course you do. Robert can do no wrong, but when I missed one family dinner because my son was sick, you didn't talk to me for a month. You've always said your favourite, and it sure as hell wasn't me." The air felt electric, like someone had lit a match in a room full of gasoline. Robert snapped back. "This isn't about you, Lisa. Don't make everything about yourself." But my mom just leaned forward across the table. "Not about me. You've been stealing the spotlight since you were born. Even tonight, when it was supposed to be about my son, you couldn't help but drag your mess into the middle of it." My grandma tried to hush her, but my mom wasn't stopping. "You've always been a golden boy. Remember when you crashed Dad's truck at 17? They blamed me for not teaching you responsibility. When you dropped out of college the first time, they said it was stress, but when I struggled to pay bills, they called me irresponsible. You've been shielded from consequences your whole life." Robert looked furious, but before he could respond, Jenna slammed her hands on the table. The sound made everyone jump. "You think this is about favoritism?" she yelled, voice shaking. This is about a man who humiliated me, lied to me, and betrayed our marriage, and instead of holding him accountable, you're all sitting here making excuses. I don't care if he's your golden boy, he's a liar. Ashley, the younger woman, finally spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know he was married when we started talking. When I found out, he told me he was separating. I thought. She trailed off, clearly realizing how bad she sounded. He thought wrong, my mom shot at her. You don't show up to someone's graduation party with a married man. That's not naive, that's cruel. Ashley started crying, and Robert tried to comfort her, which only made Jen explode even more. Are you kidding me? You're seriously going to console her right in front of me at his graduation? She pointed at me, her finger shaking. And there, it was the moment I realized nobody cared that it was my graduation. My diploma, my night, my cake sitting untouched in the middle of the table, it had all turned into Robert's show. I finally stood up, my chest scraping against the floor loud enough to make a couple of waiters peek around the corner. Enough, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but it cracked anyway. Do any of you even remember why we're here? This was supposed to be about me, my graduation, not Robert's midlife crisis, not Grandma's favoritism, not Mom's old grudges me. For a second, everyone went quiet. But then Grandpa, of course, had to ruin it. He waved his hand at me and said, Don't be dramatic, you'll have plenty of celebrations. Robert, his family, he needs our support. I swear my blood boiled right then. Are you kidding me? I shot back. You've been defending him since the second this blew up. He's a grown man who cheated on his wife, and you're worried about his feelings. What about Jenna's? What about mine? My mom put her hand on my shoulder, muttering, Don't waste your breath, they'll never see it. But Jenna wasn't holding back anymore. She turned to my grandparents, tears running down her face, and said, Do you hear yourselves? This man lied to me, humiliated me, and now you're calling him like he's a child. If that's the kind of family you are, maybe I don't belong here. Robert tried to stand, reaching out to her, but Jenna pushed him back into his seat so hard his chair squeaked. Don't touch me, you made your choice the second you answered her calls at this table. Ashley whispered something like, I should go, and tried to slip out, but Robert grabbed her wrist. No, stay, he said sharply. That was it. Jenna slapped his hand away so fast you could hear the smack across the room. The younger cousins at the kids' table were wide-eyed, whispering like they were watching the climax of a soap opera. The adults were split, some looking embarrassed, some furious, and my grandma, well, she had the nerve to stand up and say, This family will not fall apart over a silly misunderstanding. Jenna laughed bitterly. A misunderstanding? That's what you call months of lies and sneaking around. If he weren't your precious Robert, you'd be calling him exactly what he is. My mom added, Yeah, but they'll never say it. He's been a favourite since day one. He can do whatever he wants, and they'll twist it into something noble. Robert's voice finally broke through, louder than before. You think being the favourite is so great. You think it's easy having everyone expect you to be perfect. I never asked for this. You don't know what it's like. The whole room went silent. And then, from the far end of the table, my cousin Mark muttered, just loud enough for everyone to hear, Yeah, we don't know what it's like to be spoiled rotten our whole lives. Must be tough. The tension snapped like a rubber band. Robert stood up so fast his chair tipped over. I'm done with this, he barked. If you all want to gang up on me, fine, but don't expect me to apologise for wanting something better than the mess I grew up in. Jenna just stared at him, her face pale and tight, before saying quietly, You already ruined everything. And she walked out. After Jenna stormed out, the restaurant felt emptier somehow, even though everyone was still there. It was like the oxygen had been sucked out along with her, leaving only tension and guilt lingering in the air. Robert sat back down, pale, fist clenched on the table. He didn't say a word, just stared at the floor, while the rest of us tried to process what had just happened. My grandparents were in full damage control mode. My grandma fussed over the napkins like if she smoothed them enough, the disaster might disappear. Grandpa cleared his throat, looking like a man who'd swallowed a lemon whole. Now let's try to salvage this evening, he said stiffly. We're family, we stick together. My mom snorted under her breath. Stick together? Is that what you call covering for his mess while the rest of us are left cleaning up the fallout? Robert finally looked up, his eyes tired but defensive. I didn't plan for any of this to happen tonight. I just... He trailed off. The younger cousins exchanged wide-eyed glances, whispering about how dramatic everything had become. Mark, my cousin, leaned over to me, whispering, This is insane. Did anyone else think graduation would be boring? I gave him a half smile. Yeah, not exactly how I pictured it. Meanwhile, the restaurant staff had stopped serving entirely. One waiter tried to sneak a plate of pasta onto the table, and my grandma shooed him away with a trembling hand. Not now, please, we need to handle this. Robert's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, grimacing. It was Jenna. I could tell he wanted to answer, but he didn't. Instead, he shoved it into his pocket. She'll come back, he muttered, though it sounded more like a hope than a fact. My mom's voice cut through the silence. You think she'll come back because she's forgiving, or because she's stuck waiting for you to ruin her life some more? Grandpa tried to interject. Lisa, enough. No, my mom snapped. No, Grandpa, I'm done watching everyone pretend like Robert's perfection excuses everything. He's not a saint. He's never been a saint. Robert's jaw tightened. You think this is easy for me, being treated like I can do no wrong? Easy? My mom shot back. You're married, you're 32, and you're out there sneaking around. That's your idea of a problem. At that point, a few of the younger cousins started whispering loudly, pointing fingers, and some of the family friends had started quietly leaving. The party that was supposed to celebrate me was now free for all of arguments, accusations, and hurt feelings. Grandma finally slammed her hand on the table. Enough, she barked, voice cracking. Robert, whatever mistakes you've made, you are part of this family, and we will not let tonight be destroyed. Robert looked at her, then at the empty space where Jenna had been sitting. He opened his mouth as if to argue, but the words wouldn't come. The weight of everything, the favoritism, the public humiliation pressed down on him. I sat back, exhausted, looking at the cake still sitting in the middle of the table. It was my cake. My graduation. And somehow, in the chaos, I realised that nothing about this night would ever feel normal again. The days after the graduation party were brutal. I expected awkward family dinners, maybe some whispered arguments, but this was a full-blown war zone. Everyone seemed to pick sides, and Robert, once the golden boy, suddenly looked small and fragile. My grandparents were in denial. Grandpa kept saying, Robert just made a mistake. He'll fix it. He always does. My grandma nodded along, muttering about family loyalty and giving people second chances. But my mom and I weren't buying it. Every time Robert's name came up, she'd scowl and roll her eyes like she couldn't believe the nerve of our parent. Jenna didn't answer calls or texts for days. Robert kept pacing the house whenever he visited, muttering things like, "She'll forgive me, she has to," while I just shook my head. I felt bad for him in a strange way. He was clearly terrified, but at the same time, I couldn't forget how much he had hurt her and ruined my party. Mark came over one afternoon and we sat on the porch talking about the chaos. "Do you think they'll ever just admit they've played favourites?" he asked, drawing a stick for his dog. I sighed, leaning back. "No. That's the thing. They've always had favourites." Robert was untouchable. Even tonight, with the whole thing, they'd still protect him first before they considered anyone else. Meanwhile, Robert tried to reach out to Jenna with flowers and texts, but every attempt seemed to backfire. One morning, my mom caught him crying in the kitchen. "What are you doing?" she asked, and he just shook his head. "I messed up, okay? I never meant for it to spiral like this." "And?" she pressed. "Do you think anyone is going to apologise for all the favoritism that got you here?" He looked at her, the colour drained from his face. I don't know. That was the honest truth. He didn't know how to navigate this, because nobody had ever held him accountable before. Even the people he hurt, like Jenna and Ashley, had been collateral damage to his golden boy status. Meanwhile, the rest of the family was gossiping. My cousin's friends kept asking me, "Is it true, your uncle?" and I'd have to quickly cut them off. The graduation party had gone viral in family circles, texts, photos, and the infamous clip of Jen slapping Robert's hand had made the rounds. Finally, the tension reached a breaking point during a Sunday lunch. Robert tried to apologise to everyone in one go. "I know I screwed up," he started, voice shaking. "I never wanted to hurt anyone." Grandma's voice cracked. We want our family to stay together." Mum, however, stood up, fist clenched. "Stay together. This isn't about staying together. It's about accountability. Robert can't just act like nothing happened because you've always coddled him." I watched as Robert's shoulders slumped. He knew she was right. For the first time, the golden boy wasn't untouchable. And in that moment, I realised that nothing in our family would ever be the same. The favoritism, the public humiliation, it had changed everything. Weeks passed, and the tension slowly settled into a brittle kind of routine. Jenna still hadn't come back, and Robert wasn't making any bold moves to chase her. Instead, he stayed mostly quiet, lingering around the house or showing up at family dinners where he sat at the edge, avoiding everyone's eyes. My mom, surprisingly, seemed calmer. She didn't stop speaking her mind, but the yelling had eased into pointed remarks that cut deeper than any shouting ever could. "Robert," she said one afternoon, while I was helping her set the table, "you finally learned what it's like to be seen for what you actually are. Try not to forget it." Robert overheard, and he froze mid-step, like her words had pinned him in place. I could see the weight of that realization on his face. For the first time, the golden boy armor had cracked. Then came a Sunday afternoon that shifted everything slightly. Jenna returned, but not with fanfare or tears, just a quiet knock at the door. Robert opened it, and for a moment they just stared at each other. I was in the kitchen, pretending not to eavesdrop, but I could hear everything. "I'm here," she said simply. "Not to make things perfect, not to forget, but to talk." Robert nodded, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, I've done nothing but hurt you." She looked at him for what felt like a full minute. "I know, and I'm not ready to forgive, but I need honesty. No more lies, no more favours being excused." It wasn't a reconciliation, it was the first step toward one. And that was enough. Over the next few weeks, our family slowly adjusted. Grandpa and Grandma realised that the golden boy could no longer skate by with everyone tiptoeing around his mistakes. Family dinners were tense at first, but they were also honest. Conversations started to include accountability, not just praise. Robert worked to rebuild his relationships, not just with Jenna, but with the rest of us too. He apologised to Ashley, explaining the truth and accepting her judgment. He talked to my mom, acknowledging her lifelong frustrations and promising to stop acting like he was untouchable. And me? I learned something too. My graduation had been overshadowed, yes, but it also became a turning point. I saw the cracks in our family, the favoritism, and the long-buried resentments. But I also saw that the accountability, even if painful, could shift things towards something healthier. By the time the next family gathering rolled around, things weren't perfect, far from it. But there was a new sense of balance. Robert still made mistakes, Jenna still kept him on his toes, and my mom still voiced her frustrations, but it felt like the family was no longer hiding behind favoritism or excuses. And as for me, I finally got my moment, small as it was. My friends reminded me that graduation wasn't about the chaos surrounding it, it was about me and my achievements. And somehow, amidst all the drama, that lesson stuck. We never forgot that night. The graduation party that turned into public exposure became a family legend, a messy, painful, but ultimately eye-opening chapter in our lives. And honestly, it changed us all for the better.